Paul Brand, let's start with you, because we've talked a lot through the pandemic about care homes. You've done so much good work on this. This reframing of the narrative that somehow now what happened in care homes is the responsibility of the care homes. I personally find that disgusting.
Yeah, morning, Piers. Morning, Susanna. Actually, this is an argument I've often heard, that care homes are predominantly private companies. Why weren't they prepared for the pandemic? Why didn't they put in their own preparations? But just as cafes and restaurants have needed the furlough scheme, so care homes were facing factors beyond their control. And that is why they are so angry this morning about what the Prime Minister has said, because it's not a case that they weren't following the guidelines. In their view, the guidelines were impossible to follow. So, for example, on PPE, they kept changing all the time in terms of what kind of PPE should be worn in order to stop the spread of the virus. As you say, patients were being discharged from hospital into care homes without testing. So how were homes supposed to monitor the spread of the virus? And Downing Street is rowing back from these comments this morning, saying they didn't mean to blame care homes, essentially. But there is a suspicion that this is a rehearsal for the public inquiry. And more than that, that maybe this is the argument that was always being rehearsed all along, that the government had to take responsibility for the NHS, it runs the NHS, but that maybe it could shift some of the blame for the care sector.
Well, yeah, which of course, I mean, just remember, there is a document, because you reported on this, there is a document that makes it quite clear that the removal of 25,000 elderly people from hospitals was done without any necessity to give them a test to check that they were COVID-free. And Alok Sharma, I noticed, the business minister, has been on the BBC this morning. It's day 70 of the government's boycott of this show. He's been on the BBC this morning saying, I think care homes have done a brilliant job throughout this pandemic, which is literally not even 24 hours. Let's hear what Sharma had to say.
I think care homes have done a brilliant job throughout this pandemic in terms of dealing with this, the whole issue around the coronavirus. What I would say is that...
So there you have it. Within a few hours of the Prime Minister saying, actually, the care homes are to blame, we have the business minister saying they did a brilliant job. It can't be both, can it, Paul?
Well, I think that's Downing Street and the government recognising now that they've lit the torch paper there, and they don't want to ignite this row with the care sector at a time when many carers, quite frankly, are still traumatised and still grieving about what has happened in their homes. But clearly, the government knows that amongst all of the difficulties during this pandemic, this is the one that is really going to keep coming back again and again. Questions about why the care sector wasn't protected to the degree that the NHS was protected. And I think this is an attempt, perhaps, to get on the front foot ahead of that public inquiry.
Well, let's talk to an owner of care homes, David Crabtree, in North Yorkshire. David Crabtree, the accusation from the Prime Minister was that care homes didn't follow the procedures. Did you?
We did. Mr. Johnson came to my county, Yorkshire. He's picked a wrong fight with the wrong people. He made a mistake in Liverpool a few years back. This is much, much bigger. This is huge. These care staff dedicated every day to coming in here. The procedures were very, very simple. You do not cross-infect. You do not move people who potentially could have had COVID with or without symptoms. They were deliberately discharged. My residents we did not have COVID in our homes. These care staff were PPE'd up from February. A deliberate policy to discharge anybody and everybody from hospital into care homes with or without COVID for the sake of a 2-bob test. Mr. Johnson, you are responsible. The paper trail leads all the way back to you. You and your ministers and officers made this Eton mess. You are despicable for saying such a thing against the care staff that so valiantly fought for these people's lives.
David Crabtree, when you were in a position where there were patients in hospitals and you were told we need to discharge them into one of your homes, what was the conversation around COVID? Did you ask, have they had a test? Are they COVID positive? Were you told, don't worry, they're fine, they don't have any symptoms? Just for people outside, just give us an indication of what the procedure was then and what went wrong?
My resident was admitted on the 16th of March. On the 28th of March, they were emptying the wards in Bradford and Airedale like there was no tomorrow. We said, can we have a test, please? And they said, no, this gentleman tested negative on admission from your home on the 16th, therefore requires no test on the 28th. We said, but COVID is on the wards. They said, you are not having a test. It's not obligatory. The document from the government says a negative test is not necessary.
I mean, that's the key thing, because I've seen that. I've seen that. We've all seen that document. That says it all. A negative test was not necessary. They wanted to clean out the hospitals, and they didn't care what happened to the care homes. Let's bring in Asina Firth. You are a care home manager up there with David. What is your reaction on a human level to the British Prime Minister now trying to label the blame for what happened in care homes on people like you?
He's absolutely wrong. He's wrong. He doesn't know. We did our best. We've always done our best. We've always had PPE. The infection control's brilliant. Unfortunately, we didn't take any admissions. We didn't take any new admissions to the home. There was no greed there. It was our existing residents that was coming back to us that were not tested.
And they were coming back, as it turned out, some of them with COVID-19, which we know that the most vulnerable people in the world for COVID-19 are the elderly, people with potentially underlying conditions, exactly the people that would have been in the care homes. Selina, that was aimed at you, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Cathy Gardner, you lost your father to probable COVID-19 when he was in a care home. But you lay the blame fairly and squarely at the feet of the government, don't you?
I absolutely do. It was the government's decisions to do what they did and to not do specific things that has led to this total catastrophe in care homes. I'm crowdfunding and calling for a judicial review, so actual legal action on this topic. I support the calls for a public inquiry, but that's very slow and will just take so long to bring about. The judicial review process is ongoing now. We're asking for permission to have that judicial review. The response from the government so far has been just basically, it's not in the public interest. They won't engage with the reasons behind their decisions, but I'm trying to push ahead to make this judicial review happen.
Tell me about your father and what happened to him.
My father was in a fantastic care home in Oxfordshire. I have never criticised them or their care. They did their absolute best, but I know that they were pressurised to take back a resident who actually had COVID. They had tested positive, but they had to take them back to what was their home. That lady subsequently died. I don't know how many people died in my father's care home. I know that it was certainly more than 5. I don't know whether it was more than 10, more than 20. It was a large home. But I feel so sorry for care home workers and owners today. They're being criticised by the government when the responsibility firmly sits with the government and the Prime Minister. The buck stops with him.
David Crabtree, I mean, I think what really sticks in the gullet is this suggestion that somehow care homes, it was their responsibility to deal with a global pandemic, even when the government is sending tens of thousands of people out of hospitals back into care homes. That somehow you guys, who had no control over that decision-making, were then responsible for everything to do with the pandemic.
We were left out to dry. They wouldn't test our staff, they wouldn't test our residents. Even today, there is no antibody testing for care staff, yet there is for so-called frontline. They said this was on a war footing. They blew the whistle. Our troops went over the top. All the carers throughout the country went over the top for them, and now he's throwing them under the bus, just like he tried to blame the clinicians last month. And then last week he tried to blame the PHE. Mr. Johnson, the care staff here invested in you, and you promised to keep them and look after them. You've done nothing, and now you're demeaning them. You are this is an appalling situation.
Paul Brand, Oh.
We just lost Paul Brand. Let's go to Selina Firth again. Selina, on a human level, how hard has it been for you and your fellow care workers to get through this crisis so far?
Surreal, mentally, physically, tired. You know, these people to us are not national insurance numbers, they're not NHS numbers, they're people, they had personalities. We've lost people, we've been with them while they've died painful deaths. It's like the unknown, and maybe if Boris, you know, was to visit our home, he'd see.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you've all made such huge sacrifices. I know people who work in care homes, and I know the sacrifice they made. I know that many have actually lived in the care homes and not seen their families to try and protect the lives of the people they're caring for. And to have the Prime Minister yesterday stand there and basically say, yeah, a lot of people died, but not our fault, it was the care homes. Must be a kick in the teeth to all of you.
Absolutely. We were screaming for tests. Our GP, who was fantastic, went through public health to get us tests. For 29 residents, we were sent 6 tests for residents.